Have your mic on.
Call this meeting of the Washington County Board to order. We'll rise from moment of silent prayer, pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For a roll call, we are all here except for Joseph Vespalik and William Speechek, who are zooming in. And Dennis Kelling is absent, excused. Consent agenda, I'll look for a motion in a second. Supervisor Schulteis, Supervisor Mary. Any discussion, questions? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Before we go any further, it seems there's quite a few here tonight who've been subject to some misinformation. We're not deciding Samaritan tonight. We won't decide that for several months. In fact, we're not even discussing it tonight. So I'm sorry you came out, but it was not on the agenda. So you're welcome to stay and watch, but we won't be talking about Samaritan tonight. Here to represent Thank you for showing support.
That's the consent agenda. All it is a report of an update from our Samaritan Committee Chair to share what has been brought forward to the Samaritan Committee. There still is going to be a couple more ad hoc committee meetings prior to the Human Services meeting on January 25th, and then most likely it'll go to the board in February, possibly March.
You're good.
So we'll move on to item 4A, resolution 39, accepting local assistance and tribal consistency funding and amending the 2022-23 budget appropriation to allow for the use. Motion in a second. Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Shadron. Is Margie presenting? There she is. Any questions on this? We receive a small amount of federal dollars because there is a federal island in the Milwaukee River over near Newburgh. And so that's what the $50,000 a year is for. Wait,
Beyond your committee report, and the chairman just relayed to you, the amount that we're receiving is the minimum amount set at the federal level. There was no application or anything on our behalf. It was just awarded to us as a result of the federal legislation that created the ARPA funds. So if there's any questions, I can try and answer those for you tonight.
So my question's related to the fiscal impact at the end of the resolution. Uses to be determined by the U.S. Treasury. Based off of their guidance, do we have to amend our budget to approve that use?
So the guidance provided by the U.S. Department of Treasury is very broad. Basically, we can't use it for lobbying is their number one restriction. Other than that, it's pretty open to whatever we would use regular general revenues for. So we're treating it internally, just like the ARPA funds. So they're coming forward, any use would come forward to the committees, as a reported usage. Just like we've done with like the, EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, that project and the courts project. So this would be treated similar to those.
Which standing committee would this come back?
It would depend on where the funds are being used.
So the board will be told where it'll be used at a future date after it's already been spent.
Correct. Well, not necessarily after it's been
After
spent.
already it's been,
After it's been vetted through the management team here as to what it would be used towards.
I guess I would have some concern. I think this should, I would like to track it like the other funds, how you determine, but I would think that we would want to have input on this like we do with budgets and other stuff for where this is going to actually be spent. So
I will say that in the $26 million that we received in ARPA, this 100,000, we're treating it the same as that. So it's no different than those funds in our treatment and our tracking internally.
thank you.
Two-thirds vote, so vote electronically. It passes 18-2. Pardon? All right. We'll move on to resolution 40, voiding stale checks. That's you. Motion by Supervisor Murray, second by Supervisor Schwab. Any discussion? Something we do every year. Supervisor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had more of a curiosity question because one of the checks I see is to the Washington County Highway Department. How does that happen?
That was explained in executive. It was something that was double paid. Yeah. So they just voided the second one.
Okay, thank you. I was just all curious.
Any other discussion? There being none, we'll vote. All in favor? Oh, we vote there. Electronically. It passes unanimously. Our next item is 4C, and we're going to take 4C and G together because they're intertwined.
Sorry, I need to make glasses so I could see. So committee report's been presented to everyone. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. Some quick information that I wanted to provide outside of the committee report. As we went into negotiations, one of the things that was and has been consistent has been going back as much as I can remember. I've been here since what, 2014, 2015. One of the things was to always try to make sure that we are at top payer or as close to top payer as possible. And so we've consistently tried to do that. from reference standpoint, 2018, 2019, we were at top pay. A few pennies here and there, but we were at the top pay. 2021 and 22, we weren't at top pay. Ozaki County was outpacing us a few cents to 10 cents, 15 cents. I think 14 cents was 19. So coming into this contract, again, that was one of the things that we did look at. We do, I guess one of the things we do is we look at all of our comparables. And so for reference, our comparables would be Fond du Lac, that's our surrounding counties, Fond du Lac, Sheboygan, Dodge, Ozaki, and Waukesha. We do not include Milwaukee County. Prior to me, there was an arbitration. The arbiter as our comparables. And so those are who we continue to go with because that is who we would be arbitrating against if it ever went to arbitration. So again, that's why we looked at those counties. One of the things that 8% is a big increase. One of the things that drove that increase was in June of 22, Waukesha increased their pay by $3. Prior to that, we were outpacing Waukesha. That $3 put a big wrinkle in all of that. Another county, Winnebago, did the same thing right around that same window of time. That has not been consistent with all counties yet. But one of the things that Waukesha stated in their documents, one of the things that we look at all the time is the intent of trying to get lateral transfers. We've been fairly successful in the last couple of years of having people transfer laterally, meaning if they're working for another department, sheriff department, police department, otherwise, coming from that department to our county. The benefit there is we've got somebody who understands and knows law enforcement and has been successful with that. The other option is to hire people who are new. That market is drying up. There are still people who apply. It's very difficult to get those people. If we do get them, in most cases, we have to send them to academy. So we are paying these people while they are at the academy. And then when they come back here for training, anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And there is a fallout rate that happens. It's not like the majority of them make it, but there are some that fall out. So there's a significant cost there. So there's a real benefit to get lateral transfers when we can. I think the other thing I wanted people to know is prior to coming to this meeting, one of the things that we did is we did meet with the county executive, the county board chair, and the chair of the public safety committee to make sure that they were aware of what we were looking at and they were supportive of that. We've also went to the executive committee where there was a unanimous vote. And so again, I think the focus has been, let's make sure that we are at top pay and largely so we can take a look at making sure we have an environment where we can get those lateral transfers. So that's any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Any questions? Supervisor Murray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question, have you noticed, has there been any difficulty in finding qualified people? You mentioned that you can't get any young recruits coming in or new recruits, but the lateral transfer, are those happening on a regular basis, both in and out, coming in and out of the county?
We have had some who've left, not many. We have attracted quite a few. I don't have a number that I can give you, but it's not uncommon for some of our open positions where we now are starting to see lateral transfers. It's not impossible to get new recruits. When I first started, and I don't have the data, but when we would have to test people, it wasn't uncommon to have a room full of people taking tests. Now we'll have 30 people, 35 people show up for that test. So the numbers are smaller. Prior to, most of the time, people already had academy when they came in for the tests. Here, we're sending most people out for academy because they haven't done that yet. So there's a lot of changes. We've been able to recruit. When we've posted, we've been able to find candidates and recruit them. The volume is different. Does that answer your question?
Supervisor Gallitz?
Thank you, Chair.
I noticed that this is a 1-year contract, so we'll be doing this again in 11, 12 months. Were we unable to secure a longer term? We discussed a longer term contract. Because of cost of living, the union would want to do a lot more than I think would be in the county's best interest to pursue for a 2-year contract. The other piece of that is we now do the biennial budget. And so to go into a 2-year next year is going to support us. So at the end of the negotiations, I did comment to the union that the next contract needs to be a 2-year contract. I had full agreement. We'll see how the contract goes when you get into that, right? That it makes sense to get in alignment with the biennial. Thank you.
Supervisor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question regarding, and you did answer it, with regard to the comparable and that Waukesha County being the driver behind that. So the concern I have with that is Waukesha County is a county 3.5 times the size, basically, of Washington County, and a much larger tax base. And a much wealthier, I would imagine, I'd have to look at that, but their, home values and a property tax to support that. 8% to me is a substantial number. And I think if I floated out here, or asked people in this room, how many people they knew this year that received an 8% pay increase, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that could give you that number. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that got a 5% increase this year. And so I don't take this lightly. And I think I understand I want to be competitive. The want to be at the very top of something, I don't really understand. I don't think the want to be in the top quadrant, top quarter, that I understand. But the want to be at the very top, I don't. And I'll just say I can't support this number. This is far too high a number that I think to the public, to the constituents of this, this county and the people I represent, I think they'd find that an inordinately high number. And I understand, how the world is today and inflation, and a lot of people, including, most of the people in this room, are taking it as well. So I don't know if you have any feedback with regard to that observation.
I don't. I can only tell you the comparables we used and what the data supports.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Conrad.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make a comment or clarification. When we speak of the comparable counties that the arbitrator wanted, that's technically speaking of the sheriff's union themselves selected those counties, or could you clarify how those were selected?
So when you are negotiating a contract, as an example, if you don't come to an agreement, either party can seek arbitration. Outside party coming in, assigned by the government to say, let's look at this and let's try to get you to an agreement. That arbiter then says, these are the counties or these are the areas that we're going to say you need to compare yourself to. So this is an outside interest that said, these are in the future who we're going to compare you to. So this is why we don't use municipalities. This is why we don't use Milwaukee or others.
Very good. And say if this would not pass, what would those ramifications be? What would the next steps be?
I would be going back to the union to say it didn't pass. We would start negotiations again. They could choose to go to arbitration. We discussed, we didn't start with 8% or say we want to agree to 8%. We did talk about a lower number based on where we were at. They've always been there. The decision was with all parties that I've talked with, let's move forward with the 8% and make sure that we have a contract with our deputies because we want to be top pay as consistent with the past.
Thank you.
Supervisor Newman.
Thank you. I understand the need for this increase, and I will support it. I just have a concern that how this is going to be perceived to the rest of the county employees. how is their raise gonna be? How is that gonna be negotiated moving forward? Because there are several other departments that are well below their market as well. So I guess I just wanted to leave that comment out there with the concern.
Understood.
Thank you.
Anyone else? There being none, we'll vote electronically. Oh. Okay, resolution 45 ties with this, so let's discuss that too, and then we'll vote separately later. So a motion in a second, please. Supervisor Newman, Supervisor Bossert.
Hello, everybody. So you all have a committee report on this. I'm here to answer any other questions that you might have, but you know, this resolution really just comes behind and funds the impacts related to the contract on both sworn and the command staff. What this also does is that it funds some market adjustments for our corrections officers and our communications officers. Those aren't impacted by the contract specifically, but you know, as we're looking at our comparables in the market, it became very clear that we're behind our goals for remaining competitive with these high demand, high turnover positions. And so we wanted to, you know, as we're funding this stuff, we want to make sure we look at these as well. So, you know, these are to be funded with the sales tax. So again, it's an increase to the 2023 budget, the sales tax number that we have budgeted in there. We know we under budgeted that number based on the information we're seeing as of late. We just don't know to what extent that is. You know, we fully expect to receive the $530,000 to cover this and then some, and being above budget by that amount. And so modifying the budget, we're very comfortable doing that. I'm not necessarily ready to speculate today on what we think sales tax will finish at, but I can tell you that so far this fiscal year, we're already above budget and we've got additional funds still coming in. So, we're set to exceed that by more than the 530,000. We'll talk a lot more about just what that sales tax number is as we get into developing the CIP. That process kicks off next month, and then obviously the operating budget process next summer. We'll talk about the sales tax a little bit more, but that's sort of the update I have. I'm here to answer any questions if you've got any.
So we've had some issues in the past year with short staffing in our jail. Would somebody be willing to just kind of walk through what those issues are and where we're at today, and how, if we don't adjust the jailers to match the adjustment we're doing to the deputies, how that would exacerbate those staffing issues? That's probably a kind of question, but
Yeah, I don't know that I can give you an exact answer. I have not personally looked at the data before I came down here to say how we compare to our comparables there. I do know that wages are always an issue within the jail. I think right now I believe we have 8 open positions.
and that's 8 open out of how many total?
Intensive.
I think 62 or 63.
So, and so it's a regular process trying to find them. So wages certainly is an issue. The position is also a challenge, right? I mean, so it's finding the person who wants that position, and then they're highly sought after by all of the other counties and those who Milwaukee and others who have jails.
And then, am I still active? Yep. I think one of the things we're going to see as the board over the next couple of years with the inflation, we're going to continue to combat this issue with wages rising, as well with the short staff, and wages are essentially going to go up until they're at a high enough level that they attract people to come back to these jobs. So we need to, as a board, be prepared to continue to deal with these wage issues So thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Supervisor Gallantz?
Raise my hand on it. Okay, thank you. So this is, my question is around the funding. So we're using a variable funding source for a finite expense. And I know you said we project to get the sales tax, but say we don't, or it doesn't continue in successive years. And I know we haven't even gotten to the desired 2-year contract with the next. So maybe a little bit to Supervisor Bosser's comment is, should we be using sales tax dollars to fund this if we likely are going to be seeing a drop off in sales tax as our recession is going to hit us in the next year or two?
So technically the way this works is we increase the sales tax budget, which sits in non-departmental. And then we increase the expenditure budget in the sheriff's department, which looks like it drives up the tax levy over there, but we're reducing the tax levy over here. So I say that because in future years, in future years, we're really talking about holistically the tax levy, the sales tax, everything is combined. I mean,
Yeah, true. It's another revenue farm. I get that. And we're confident that the 530 that's projected to pay for all this, we're going to receive. But if we are less than that, then you'd be coming back to the board to say, we got 480 versus 5, whatever, and therefore we're going to need to take it out of some other fund that either you can address, or if it needs to come to board for policy, then the board would address.
Well, the way it would work is we would increase the budget, and if this is a big if we did run short, then we would address that in the next operating budget.
Thank you.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes, so with regard to that, one of the concerns is there are people that aren't a fan of sales tax. I am, I was for it. I think it's a good revenue source. The concern that I have with regard to it is that, handling it this way, it sort of looks like, I'm just saying from a perception standpoint, to the taxpayer, that's sort of a slush fund, that there's additional revenue that goes into it. And, that additional revenue is really driven by inflation, right? We have inflation. So as people's dollars, as their costs went up, that was sort of a hidden tax that they were paying this year here in Washington County. So that was sort of an additional hidden tax that went into it. And so when people see that, they just look like we're finding an expense to go along with the extra revenue. And I just, I don't think to the taxpayer that's that optically that it's a good look. And I think we should, we should look at funding that a different way and taking, because some of that sales tax dollars, that was supposed to be, something that offset the property tax. And so not as an additional revenue source. And I think there are a lot of people out there that if they looked at this like that, they wouldn't like it. And I understand that. And so that's just an observation I wanted to make. Thank you.
Supervisor Conrad?
Thank you. Yes, so this year we would use this excess sales tax to cover these proposed costs. That how do we sustain that?
We're talking about increasing the sales tax base tonight is what we're talking
Yeah.
about, right? So that number stays into perpetuity would be the point.
And that we have this money, this whatever slush fund or whatever you want to call it. What about the other needs of the county? Where's the Samaritan? What about the other needs of the county where there's money utilized? I mean, is there a bigger plan or something for maybe other excess sales tax revenue and what we're going to do with that? Or is this all we're kind of expecting right now and we're putting this just into this one pot?
No, I can tell you that this is not all we're expecting. We'll have additional discussions. Like I said, when we start building the CIP, when we start building the next operating budget, we'll have lots of discussions about the sales tax.
Yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable. We tend to put the cart before the horse here, you know, just like Supervisor Krebs noted on the last item that we, you know, voted on with uncertainties and not really quite having the full picture and the full story before we vote on something. It makes me a little uncomfortable.
Are there any additional questions I can answer? Or-
No, thank you.
Supervisor Schwab.
Thank you, Chairman. Isn't it true that what we're talking about this evening is a stopgap method for this year? And when we get to the next biennial budget, then we make the adjustments necessary at that time. So it's apparent that we have an expected windfall in sales tax. It's obvious that we have an apparent need to treat our employees in the sheriff's department fairly. When we look at the ravages of inflation, certainly these people have been affected as much as anyone. Certainly they are valuable employees to the county. And so it's my opinion that we ought to use this expected windfall to fill the need of having sheriff's department employees. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Duncan.
I would like to just say that I'm in agreement with Mike, Supervisor Schwab. This really is just intended for this year. So when we put together our next budget, it may very well turn out to be that we need to add a levy in order to cover all the expenses. But this is not intended to always come out of sales tax.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have questions or discussion? There being none, procedurally, we're gonna vote for resolution 45 first, because in part it funds the other resolution. So we'll vote on resolution 45. This requires a 2/3 vote. It passes 18-2. Then we'll follow up with resolution 41. Any further discussion on that? There being none, we'll vote.
Sorry.
Please revote. There was a problem with the system.
Yeah, just have to.
Passes 18-2. Our next item is 4D, resolution 42, accepting additional community development block grant. Supervisor Schultheis. I need a second. Supervisor Toma. Somebody presenting on this. Does anybody have questions as to what this is? Steve. found another $500,000 to give to Family Promise, so we're facilitating that. And they have to match it. So, questions? Supervisor Shadron?
Yeah, thank you. I just, as I mentioned before, since my company, not my company, the company I work for is involved in this project, I will be abstaining from voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Vote electronically. Passes 19, one abstention. Our next item is resolution 43, Park and Trails Maintenance Fees, budget amendment.
Evening. I'm here to really just answer any questions you guys have about this.
Oh, can I have a motion in a second, please? Supervisor Conrad, Supervisor Mary. Any questions or discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. We're missing one vote. Did somebody not vote? Did everybody vote? We're missing a vote. And it's not me. The vote passes unanimously with one non-vote. Item F is resolution 44, authorizing Washington County to accept donation of a permanent port storage shed to be constructed at Ackerman's Grove County Park. Motion in a second. Supervisor Conrad, Supervisor Schwab.
Any questions on this resolution?
I do. The existing smaller shed there.
Yep.
Do we own that or was that soccer club also?
That was a soccer field, yes.
And that's going to be removed?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in disrepair out there.
Any further questions? Supervisor Krebs. Oh, there you go.
I know the final design is subject to approval of staff, and I would just encourage that the final aesthetic looks of it are better than the rendering on the sales code that's attached to the committee packet. So, yeah, if we could make it look a little bit better than a tin box. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Supervisor Conrad.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. I'm wondering about maintaining the building and then any potential liability on the building. Who would be accountable for those two things?
That would be the soccer club.
Any other questions? There being none, we'll vote electronically. The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Our next item is ordinance 6 to amend the shoreline, wetland and floodplain zoning maps established and maintained pursuant to several sections of the code. We have a motion by Supervisor Krebs, second by Supervisor Conrath. Mr. Tebow.
I really don't have anything to present other than what's in front of you in the entire packet. The last 3 pages, I think, of the packets, all the information should be in there. If there's any questions, I can answer those.
Any questions? There being none, we'll go ahead and vote. Also passes unanimously. Thank you, Paul. And our last item is to amend section 8.6 relating to food safety and recreational licensing. Is this you, Brad?
This is really just a cleanup of the ordinance. The state changed the terminology in the recreational licensing law, and so we want to amend the ordinance to reflect the change. Our language is consistent with what the state uses. Kim was our health officer on a report regarding this particular request. He can't be with us this evening, but it is really just a formality. It's nothing.
Questions? Moved by Supervisor Schultheis, second from Supervisor Shadrock. We'll vote electronically. We're missing a vote again. Yes. Passes 19 to nothing. We're missing a vote.
Please make sure that when you're voting, there's a little check mark in the top right corner of either the yes or abstention.
Thank you all. Our next meeting date is Wednesday, January 11th at 6 p.m. Meeting's adjourned.